Hello everyone, I thought I would do a Tartarus strategy guide here. So let's get right to the point. Essentially with Tartarus, I've noticed a lot of people are having trouble with Tartarus, so I thought I'd make a strategy guide type video for potential help for more people to survive the game mode, say for people who are struggling, which I know a few people who are. So this video is meant for you guys, and if you want to know just general good strategies against Tartarus, this video's for you. Let's get right into Phase 1. Well, actually, a small correction. Before we get into Phase 1, we have to talk about the pre-round stuff. So, Tartarus, you get an advanced warning of when Tartarus is about to occur, due to its Eerie. It's the only game mode with a map Eerie. Well, a map voting Eerie, I mean. But essentially what that means is that it can, it'll jump scare you with a blood moon when the map voting is about to begin. Override the map theme, so you get time to pick your map vote strategically. It's not like Doomsday where it usually comes out of nowhere. And, Tartarus has unique loot items that can spawn as well, mainly ancient texts and idols. Now with idols, let's start with ancient texts first. With ancient texts, you have to be careful. You have to be careful. They are essentially a gamble over what you get. Essentially, what can happen there is sometimes you'll get blessed, and other times you'll get cursed. There's not really any way to do this. Like, there's not really any way to tell until you actually pick up the text. Unfortunately, it's purely random. However, with idols, on the other hand, you can tell the difference between a good and bad idol. With that, you have to look at roughly the center of the idol. In the center of the idol, there will be an image of a moon. And with that moon, that's how you can tell the difference. Essentially, what you can do is that you can tell it is a difference between a real or cursed idol by looking at the moon, which is a circle. If it's red, then it's a real idol, but if it's white, then it's cursed. We'll get into what cursed idols do later, but just know that real idols are really useful. So keep that in mind. Ancient texts can also be useful, but they are significantly more of a gamble. But yeah, Tartarus will now start, and we will go into Phase 1 strats. So let's start with the obvious. Phase 1, what are all the disasters that you could get? For Phase 1, you could get any of the following. Acid rain. You could also get meteors, avalanche, tsunami, flood, lava flood. You could also get a tornado. The tornado can be anywhere from EF1 to EF5. But you have to be careful of Zeus lightning during these. Zeus lightning is the default lightning for Tartarus, and on certain maps it could be a problem. However, what really could get players tripped up is loyalty questions, which I will now explain. Loyalty questions, essentially, throughout all of Tartarus, except for Phase 4, Tartarus will occasionally question people their loyalty. So, for example, a question you might get as a result is, do you oppose Tartarus opposition? And you'd have to answer to prove your loyalty. If you answer incorrectly, you could get a punishment that's either struck by lightning or 3 dead hands. The punishment is not random, and it seems to be tied to the question itself, so keep that in mind when answering. And some of the questions can also be trick questions. An example of a trick question could be, for example, do you not believe Tartarus is the strongest entity in the universe? And this is the first time, where your idol could actually make a difference in the Tartarus run. Essentially, what your idol can do is that you can, real idols can prevent you from being questioned, while fake idols will make the questions harder to, they'll make it harder to understand the question by completely randomizing the letters. It's completely scrambled into uninterpretable gibberish most of the time. However, for Tartarus Phase 1 in general, the same strats you use for the bonus disasters themselves should work as long as your strat is not corner. Due to the Zeus lightning, corner lightning is enabled during Tartarus, so corner strats will not work most of the time. Moving on from that, we have to be careful of the, thankfully though, during Phase 1, the sub-disasters that occur during Tartarus don't start. Those get activated later on in Phase 2, which I guess I might as well now talk about, since I think I've exhausted everything I wanted to say about Phase 1. So let's move the clock to let's move the clock to 12 a.m. and continue the video. Alright, Phase 2. With Phase 2, there are less disasters to choose from. But all of them deserve their own explanation. Well, most of them deserve their own explanation. So the disasters you can get during Phase 2 are Alien Invasion, Black Hole, Volcano, Hurricane, and Special Tornado. Let's start with Black Hole, because it's the simplest. Black Hole is unchanged. Like, completely unchanged from normal. But moving on, we have Alien Invasion, which is also mostly unchanged, though they get a unique name, planet, and behavior. The behavior is serving, and if you're wondering where that is on the Alien Invasion difficulty, it's technically right below Vengeful, which is likely due to all the bonus disasters that occur during Tartarus. Next up, we have Volcano, which is just a super volcano. It has a unique name, but nothing else really too outstanding. And the same is true for Hurricane Abaddon, which is the hurricane that you can get during Tartarus. Essentially, Hurricane Abaddon doesn't really have anything too unique. It just starts out at Category 6, just like Hurricane Endgame. So yeah, the same strats you use for Hurricane Endgame should work for Hurricane Abaddon. And finally, we have Special Tornado, and there is a lot to go over with this one. Special Tornado could be random game mode, could be a random game mode from a given list. And I actually have the list right here. It can be Infer, Glitch, Mega, Ghost, which may have possibly been removed, because after talking with some of my friends, none of them have seen Glitch in quite a while. And then we have Krampus, which used to be possible, but was removed. And the last two are Unstoppable and Your Doom. And in case you're wondering, there is a big difference with the Unstoppable and Your Doom in Tartarus versus normal. The Tartarus versions actually do not insta-kill. So that could be a saving grace. Though it's still a really bad situation if you get grabbed items, so just try and avoid it if at all possible. But now we move on to the sub-disasters that can occur in Phase 2. And those sub-disasters that Tartarus has are similar to Doomsday, though there is a little difference. Firstly, Tartarus can do Ghostnado's Avalanche. It can do Bombs Away, like all 4 of the bombs from Bombs Away, so, you know, Yellow Lightning, the red ones. It can do the Blue Bursts and the Moabs. So definitely be careful there. But we also have Celestial Debris and Hoshi Stars. Though the Celestial Debris works a little bit differently than it does in Black Hole. It only has the range of, say, Yellow Lightning. So you have to be careful of that. And also, from this point on, Super Zeus is enabled. But now we move on to the map tilt. And this is where map choice can be extremely important for your Tartarus run. Because terrain does not get tilted with the rest of the map. Because I don't even think that's possible on the Roblox engine. So, thankfully, terrain can literally save the game if you get a question wrong during the map tilt, which, yes, you can get questioned during this part. The map will tilt to roughly 80 degrees or so. And, obviously, you have to try and get on top of the map, or else you could fall into the void. This is a very stressful part of the Cursed Idol runs. And I will advise that Cursed Idol runs really should be done on terrain maps due to map tilt. If you get struck by lightning here, you could end up very, very dead very, very quickly. But that's true for most of the rest of Tartarus beyond this point. The sub-disasters from Phase 2 still actually happen, so you have to watch out for those as you climb up the map slope. But eventually, once you get to the top of the map tilt, you will be higher up than any bonus disaster can hit you, so you'll be safe up there until Tartarus removes the map tilt. But now let's talk about how to deal with the map tilt, which thankfully it's pretty simple. The map tilt can only occur in 2 directions, and I think it's east-west. Though don't count me wrong too much if I'm not correct there. I haven't studied map directions that well. Essentially, what this can mean is that I could be wrong here. It might be north-south, but either way, it's only in 2 directions. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that it'll either be up or down at the same time. It doesn't have the same multi-direction format that Hurricane does. The only thing that changes is which side goes up and which side goes down. Try not to drag out this video because I want it to be short and concise. But also want to be very comprehensive, so this is a fine balance here. I'll stop blabbering and let's move the clock to 3 a.m. and start discussing the sub-disasters. Well, the banished disasters that Tartarus can do. Yeah. Starting off with the bonus disaster that just recently killed me on my last Tartarus, solar flares. Now, solar flares are extremely random, so keep in mind, not every strategy will work. However, there are general strats you can use to make yourself survive better. Mainly, the strat you can use is hug the walls. Solar flares are less likely to target the walls, and just keep an eye on the sky. It will be hard to see the solar flares due to your vision getting blinded partially by them. But in general, they are pretty similar to Bombs Away. They are similar to the bombs that Bombs Away does, except they happen much faster, and the beams themselves are also deadly. They do fling you, so be careful. But regardless, now let's talk about the solar flare part that's random. It's how many you get on each run. Because as a fun little fact, it's almost never the same. I split solar flares, I guess, like waves into two different parts. Waves and volleys. Volleys are just how many per wave. Well, no. Volleys, I like to say, is how many waves there are, and waves is just how many impacts there are. You could get anywhere from 5 to 8 like solar flares per volley, and there's 8 to 15 volleys that you can get, so the game calls them waves. So keep that in mind, it is an extremely random disaster. But honestly, this is I would say honestly that this is one of the easier bonus disasters that you can get during Tartarus. Though keep in mind, once again, easy doesn't mean free. And that's essentially everything I wanted to talk about with solar flares. So let's move on to Hypercane, which I get a lot. Hypercane is what works similar to Hurricane and Disaster Warning, though obviously it's significantly more powerful than a normal hurricane. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to know that, though. Essentially, Hypercane starts off at a random direction, and the debris will gradually come in faster and faster. However, during Hypercane's phase changes, like for example from outer bands to landfall, and then again from landfall to eye wall, the Hypercane will send out anywhere from 2 to 4 energy waves, which are essentially vertical walls of energy with a hole in them. These walls do about 30 or so damage each, so sometimes it is better to just tank it, especially if you can't reach the wall anyways. Especially if you can't reach the hole anyways. So yeah, I'll give 2 to 4 of them before going on to the next phase. But then we reach the eye wall, which is where things change. The eye wall, the winds at the eye wall are so powerful that the debris will begin exploding, which can destroy terrain. Which obviously could be bad on maps where they rely on terrain. Mainly I'm talking about Death Valley. You could get wrecked on this map because of this disaster. But after enough, you'll get into the eye of the storm. And here is where things get interesting. You get about 20 to 30 seconds of recess. I forgot what Like, I wanted to use a specific word, but I got it. So don't mind me there. Just not exactly having the best memory. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that you get a short recess towards the end of the disaster, but the Hypercane winds will change direction. So you have to be careful there. Pay attention to the roleplay messages. It is very important during this disaster. Like, unlike other disasters where you can mostly get away with not reading the roleplay messages, for Hypercane you practically have to read the roleplay messages to know what's happening. However, the Hypercane does not give energy waves as it's going out. Instead, after you do the final eye wall, the Hypercane will end. It used to be a glitch where a Hypercane would insta-kill, like the Hypercane debris could insta-kill, but thankfully that is believed to be patched. So thankfully you don't have to worry about insta-kill Hypercane debris. Which honestly, be glad about that, because that seems like a dumb way to lose a Tartarus. There's not really too much. I think I've said everything I wanted to say about Hypercane, so let's move on to Weeping Angel. And oh boy, is there a lot of stuff to talk about with this one. Well, not really. But there's still more. Weeping Angel is one of the more simple in concept, but can actually be a pain, especially if you're doing a curse run. Or if you have half health thanks to an ancient text. Essentially, Weeping Angel, at its core, works more like red light, green light than anything. The angel will open it and close its eyes, because it's apparently a very sleepy angel. And it will alternate between these at roughly 5 to 20 second intervals. However, you're free to move around while the angel's eyes are closed, but if the angel's eyes are open, you must stay put. Now, thankfully, not all movement counts towards Weeping Angel movement. For example, you're allowed to fall as long as no inputs are in. Yeah, it really just checks for inputs. So, like, if you get struck by lightning and flung, it won't count as a moving for Weeping Angel. But if you panic and, like, press W because you got struck by lightning, because, like, you got a question wrong or something, it will count and you will get struck by the angel. And a common misconception I've seen about Weeping Angel is that it insta-kills, when that's not true. Also, a little bit of trivia here. Weeping Angel does not strike you. Well, Weeping Angel does not strike you with lightning if you've already died before, which isn't really that helpful, but I just found it to be interesting. That's pretty much everything I wanted to go over with the Weeping Angel. So let's finish off Phase 3 by going over Pure Insanity. When I said there was a lot to talk about with this one, I really meant there's a lot to talk about with Pure Insanity. Pure Insanity is the largest tornado in the game. It is roughly 15% larger than your Doom and moves in a similar pattern to it. So essentially, using your Doom strats for pure insanity is a good starting point, especially if you have a normal idol. Though, if you don't have a normal idol, then you have to be a little bit more crafty. The reason why is because pure insanity is the first use of mind control in Tartarus. Basically, Tartarus will try and move you to the tornado. Tartarus will try and move you into the tornado by overriding your character movement. You can do several things to fight this. I will go over it soon. But regardless, that is everything mostly about pure insanity. For pure insanity, it's recommended to choose a map with terrain for slower speeds. Because tornadoes will get slowed down greatly. It will be a big help, especially if you choose Death Valley, because Death Valley has a spot where you can cheese the mind control. But that's about everything. Pure insanity is easier on terrain maps. But now let's go over to Phase 4 and set the clock to 6 a.m. Phase 4. 4 pillars will rise up from the corners of the maps, and you must disable all 4. You must disable all 4 before a timer runs out, or else the Blood Moon will be impossible to stop and everyone will lose. Now, keep in mind that the timer is heavily dependent on how many players are still left. So you'll get more time if there's less players alive. Meaning that if there's more players alive, like let's say there's 10 survivors left, you're going to need to coordinate really well with the rest of the server, or else you guys might not get all 4 pillars in time. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, the pillars, although they do emerge in mostly the same order, the pillars will become vulnerable one by one in a random pattern. Essentially, the best thing you could do here is react. Basically, hope that the pillar you're near, go near a pillar in advance, climb up most of the way, and hope it's the first one to get a head start. Though keep in mind, if you're too close to the top of the pillar, it will fling you off of it. So keep that in mind as you continue to disable the pillars. The pillars also have their own special powers when disabled. Water is the easiest one to deal with the blue pillar, and it disables the Blood Rain, which is that red blizzard-like effect that you see during Tartarus. Basically, what you want to do, so you gotta hope that one's not last, or else you have to deal with the other 3 pillars' effects. And let's go over those. Red, aka the fire pillar, will spam a bunch of meteors. If you've seen Twisty the Clown, then you would know about meteors, woohoo. The red pillar's attack is essentially that. Okay, why did I say essentially? It's literally just that. Moving on from that, we have the green earth pillar, which the TLDR for that is that it will do a bunch of bombs from bombs away, with Moabs being the main target, like a main threat. Like, obviously Moabs there are the main threat, but it's not the only threat. There's also other bombs, and it can spam them at random. Next up, we have the purple, aka the energy pillar, and it will spawn 10 dead hands as a sort of ambush around all players that are still eligible for survival. Meaning that if you're not eligible to survival, then you don't have to worry about dead hand ambush. And thankfully, that's all 4. For Cursed Idol runs, you do have one saving grace in that loyalty questions do stop here. So after this, after the pillars go up, you will no longer have your loyalty questioned. So if you struggle with the questions, then Phase 4 is a break from that. It's the only part in Tartarus where you're not questioned at all. But now let's follow up with mind control, which does become a problem later on in this phase. Now, fun little fact, Tartarus will get more and more desperate with the more pillars you disable. Meaning that as a result, Tartarus will do more and more things to try and stop you. Like for example, at first, there will be very little bonus like sub-disasters during this phase. But eventually, towards the end, there will be more and more as more pillars get disabled. However, there is an extra trick. Mind control returns from pure insanity here. And towards the end of the phase, Tartarus will try and mind control players off of the pillars by just mind controlling them to the center of the map. And yes, this can be used to your advantage, so keep that in mind. But regardless, this is a very challenging phase if you're in a public server. Now, I guess I'll finish off the video by explaining more about the Cursed Idol and normal idol stuff. So Cursed Idols, they will scramble the questions to make the challenge harder. Obviously, they're meant to try and trick players into picking them up instead of a real idol. Regardless of their real purpose, if you beat Tartarus without a normal idol and you have a Cursed Idol in your inventory, then you will get a unique badge that's very hard to get. In fact, as far as I'm aware, currently only around 204 people have this badge. Could be more, could be one less. I'm not entirely sure if anyone's gotten it since I last checked. But I guess that really covers everything. Cursed Idols also do make mind control last longer than normal, so keep that in mind as well when doing curse runs. As for answering questions with Cursed Idols, I don't really have anything to say. You just gotta be lucky. Like, just go with your gut and hope you don't get struck by lightning with the questions. Unless it's Weeping Angel, in which case getting struck by lightning would be the better punishment. Final bits of strategy is that I recommend doubling up on your healing items, especially if you don't have a goblet. But regardless, that's about everything I wanted to cover about Tartarus. If you have any further questions, about Tartarus, I will gladly answer them in the comment section. Until then, farewell. See you guys in the next vid, which hopefully will be Twisty number 100.